The doctor looked at me with a soft smile before delivering the news. "Congratulations, you're having a baby." Before I could even process the words, I was interrupted by a loud slap as Martha, my mother-in-law, slammed her hands down on the desk. The shock on my face was barely covered by the words that followed. "This child will have our last name." Her tone was firm, as if her statement was the absolute truth, and the air in the room grew tense. I turned to Derek, my husband, seeking some kind of support, but instead he nodded, adding, "She's right. It's tradition." The weight of his words hit me hard, and I felt my hands clench into fists. It took everything I had not to shout, "Not this time." I took a deep breath and calmly reached into my bag. Pulling out a legal document, I slid it across the desk toward the doctor, who glanced at it and let out a low whistle. "Oh, you don't know, do you?" he muttered, his eyes widening. Derek frowned. "What is this?" he asked, his voice tinged with confusion. I kept my voice steady as I responded. "This is proof that I have sole naming rights for this child." I had anticipated this moment. Martha's overbearing nature and her need to control everything. Even before we started trying for a baby, I did my research. In Texas, the mother has full legal rights to name the child, unless there's an agreement to the contrary. So, a few months ago, I visited a lawyer and ensured that Derek unknowingly signed a consent form during one of our routine visits. This was my safeguard against exactly this scenario. Martha's face turned a deep shade of red, and she grabbed the document from the desk, quickly scanning through it. "This is ridiculous," she screamed. "You tricked him," she accused. Calmly, I responded, "No, I just planned ahead." Derek's expression hardened. "This wasn't what we talked about," he muttered, more to himself than to me. Martha turned to him, her eyes filled with anger. "Fix this," she demanded, her voice barely controlled. Derek rubbed his temples, clearly stressed. "We'll talk about this later," he said. I could feel my anger rising. "Later?" I repeated. I stood up, grabbed my things, and walked out of the doctor's office, feeling like my whole world was crashing down. By the time I got home, my phone was blowing up. Messages from Derek's family flooded in, accusing me of ruining the family name and attacking me for standing up for myself. I was bombarded with texts, each one more enraged than the last. When Derek came home later that evening, he tossed his keys onto the table and said, "This is insane. You're making a big deal out of nothing." I shook my head, laughing bitterly. "Nothing?" I repeated. "This isn't about a name. It's about control. She's trying to control our baby, just like she controls everything else." He countered, "Martha is just trying to help." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "She wants to control our child like she controls you." I shot back. Derek sighed heavily. "Can't you just compromise?" he asked, frustration seeping into his voice. I took a deep breath. "I am compromising," I said calmly. "The baby will have my last name." That's when Derek snapped. "You're being selfish," he accused. The words hit me like a slap. I could feel the cold weight of those words settle in my chest. "Selfish?" I asked incredulously. "What about what's best for our child? What about me? You can't just keep ignoring me in this marriage." Derek didn't respond. He simply grabbed his keys and left. And I was left in the silence of our home, trying to understand how things had gone so wrong. A week later, my phone rang again, and when I answered, the voice on the other end belonged to someone from the hospital. "Ma'am, we just want to confirm your request to change the birth certificate paperwork. Your husband and his mother submitted a request to list the child under his last name instead of yours." I nearly dropped my phone. My hands began to shake as I processed the information. "No," I said, trying to remain calm. "That's not possible. I have sole naming rights." The voice on the other end hesitated, clearly confused. "We're just confirming the request." It seemed unusual. I quickly ended the call and texted Derek. "We need to talk. Now." When Derek finally came home that evening, he looked guilty, but there was something else, like he was justifying his actions to himself. "You tried to change the birth certificate behind my back," I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. He sighed, looking defeated. "I thought if we handled it quietly, you'd get over it," he said, avoiding my gaze. I shook my head in disbelief. Get over it? I repeated. Martha is making decisions about our child before they're even born. If this is how it starts, what's next? Derek didn't answer. At that moment, I knew there was no going back. The following morning, I went straight to my lawyer. By the time I was done, Derek had been served divorce papers, and I had a restraining order against Martha. Martha wasn't done, though. Later that day, she showed up at my house, screaming on my front lawn. "This is ridiculous. You can't keep my grandchild from me," she yelled. I smiled coldly. "Oh, but I can," I said. Derek came in shortly after, begging. "This is insane. We can fix this." I turned to him, finally fed up. "No," I said firmly. "You could have fixed this, but you chose her over me, over our child." And just like that, I was done. That night, Derek didn't come home. I had already packed a bag and was staying with my best friend, Laura. Because I didn't trust either Derek or Martha. At 3 a.m., my phone rang. It was Derek. I let it go to voicemail. Then came the text. "Derek, we need to talk. You're overreacting. Let's be adults about this." And then, "Fine. If you want war, you'll get war." That last text sent a shiver down my spine. I knew Martha would never accept defeat, but I had underestimated just how far she would go. 2 days later, I was sitting in my lawyer's office when she sighed and pushed a thick stack of papers toward me. "He's filing for full custody," she said, her voice steady. The words didn't register at first. "Full custody?" I repeated, almost unable to believe it. My lawyer nodded. "They're claiming you're mentally unstable and unfit to be a mother. They're saying you've been emotionally erratic and vindictive toward Derek and his family. They're accusing you of trying to erase him from the baby's life out of spite." I couldn't help it. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because the entire situation felt like some twisted nightmare. "Let me guess," I said through gritted teeth. "Martha's behind this." My lawyer gave me a knowing look. I'd bet my license on it. The next few weeks were nothing short of hell. Derek and Martha spread horrible lies about me, telling his side of the family that I was keeping the baby away from Derek, claiming I never loved him and was using the situation to hurt him. It was a smear campaign, and I could feel my world unraveling as every day passed. But I wasn't backing down. Not anymore. I had come too far to let them control me. I was completely blindsided by what Derek and Martha had done. The baby, to punish me. They spread the lie to mutual friends that I was having mental breakdowns. They even told my co-workers that I was struggling with severe emotional distress and might not be able to perform at my job. Thankfully, my boss saw right through their manipulation, but it didn't stop there. The worst part came when they went to court and presented a claim that I was an alcoholic. Something I could not have imagined in a million years, because I don't even drink. I sat there in that courtroom, feeling like I was trapped in a nightmare, as Derek's lawyer aggressively argued that I had a history of erratic behavior and potential substance abuse. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Then, as if things weren't bad enough, they presented fake receipts from a liquor store that was near my house. I nearly lost it. I wanted to stand up, scream, and defend myself right then and there. But before I could, my lawyer was quick on her feet. She immediately shut down their claims. She pulled at my credit card records, proving I had never bought anything from that store. On top of that, she got the store owner to confirm I had never been there. The judge looked at Derek's lawyer with a glare that could have burned a hole through them and sternly warned, "This better not happen again." But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Martha had more tricks up her sleeve. And sure enough, after that court hearing, things started getting even weirder. I would come home and feel like my personal belongings had been moved, or I'd find my trash cans knocked over, like someone had been going through them. There were also a few nights when I would hear tapping on my windows, late at night, with no explanation. At first, I tried to brush it off, but it didn't sit right with me. I share my concerns with Laura, my best friend, and she convinced me to install security cameras just to be safe. 2 nights later, at around 2 a.m., my phone pinged. Motion detected at the front door. My heart started pounding. I opened the app, and my stomach dropped as soon as I saw what was on the screen. There was Martha, standing on my porch, trying to peer through my windows. I quickly hit record and immediately called the police. When they arrived, Martha put on an act, sobbing and pretending to be the victim. She wailed, "I just wanted to talk to her. She won't let me see my grandbaby." But the cops weren't buying it. With the footage I had, they arrested her for trespassing. I thought that would be the end of it, but once again, I was wrong. A week later, I was preparing for yet another custody hearing when I received an email from an anonymous sender. The subject line read, "Thought you should know." Inside was an attachment. I opened it, and my stomach twisted into knots as I read the email. It was a message from Derek to his lawyer. "Mom thinks we should push harder. She has a friend at CPS who can raise concerns about my name. If we get enough reports, maybe the court will see she's unfit." I couldn't believe my eyes. Derek and Martha were scheming to weaponize Child Protective Services against me. They want to destroy my reputation, use false reports to discredit me, and make sure I couldn't keep my baby. My hands trembled as I forwarded the email to my lawyer. Her response came back swiftly. "We're going to bury them." In that moment, I knew this had escalated from a simple custody battle into a full-fledged war. 2 days later, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, I found a woman in a blazer holding a clipboard. "Is this my last name?" she asked in a calm but serious voice. "Yes," I answered, my heart racing. She looked at me with a sympathetic expression. "I'm from Child Protective Services. We receive a report of potential neglect and endangerment regarding your unborn child." My stomach dropped. Derek and Martha had actually gone through with it. They'd made the call. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. She walked into my apartment and began glancing around, as if she was already making a mental assessment. "I just need to ask you a few questions," she explained, flipping through her notes. "We've received multiple reports," she continued, reading off the allegations. "One says you have a drinking problem. Another says you were seen doing drugs in your car. There's also an allegation that you've been threatening to disappear with a baby." At that last one, I actually laughed, partly in disbelief. "I don't drink, I don't do drugs, and I've never said I would disappear with a baby," I told her firmly. She nodded, still flipping through her notes. "Well, we'll be investigating further. We'll need to interview your friends and family, and we'll also conduct an unannounced visit." Of course they would. Martha wanted to keep me under a microscope, hoping to find some excuse to take the baby from me. But she underestimated me. I wasn't going to let this happen. I kept my apartment spotless, had all my medical records ready, and made sure I gave CPS all the necessary numbers to verify my story. My boss, my lawyer, my doctor, I knew they wouldn't find anything that could hurt me. At the same time, I was preparing for the next court hearing. My lawyer and I had already exposed Derek's attempt to falsify evidence, but we were both bracing for them to come up with something worse. And then out of nowhere, I got a call from Laura. "You're not going to believe what I just found out," she whispered. There was a pause before she continued. "You know how Martha always goes on and on about how important the family name is?" I rolled my eyes. "Yeah, she acts like it's royalty," I replied, sarcasm dripping from my voice. "Well," Laura hesitated before she revealed the bombshell, "I did some digging, and it turns out that family name isn't all it's cracked up to be. There's a lot more to Martha's past than she's letting on, and it might just come back to haunt her." At that moment, I knew we were far from finished with this battle. It wasn't just about my child anymore. It was about revealing the truth, and I was ready to fight until the very end. I had always known that Martha wasn't exactly someone I could trust, but I never expected it to go this far. It all started when Laura sent me an old newspaper article. At first, I didn't think much of it, but when I dug deeper, my heart sank. It turned out that Martha had legally changed her last name years ago. The last name she'd been using, the one she insisted was tradition, wasn't even hers. She had married a man with that name, but after divorce, she kept it because it sounded prestigious. The name she was so protective of, the one she demanded my child carry, wasn't even a part of her real identity. It wasn't just a name. It was a carefully crafted image that she had built her entire life on. The next time we were in court, I knew I had to be ready. Derek and his lawyer came in, looking smug, like they thought they had the upper hand. CPS was still investigating me, so I knew they were hoping to use that against me. Martha sat in the back, arms crossed, her face stone cold, wearing a white suit like she owned the place. She acted like she was the queen of the courtroom, but I was prepared. The judge called the session to order and began, Mr. and Mrs. Derek's last name, let's address. Before he could continue, I raised my hand. Excuse me, Your Honor, that's not my last name. The room went silent. I could feel Martha's eyes on me, her face twitching with annoyance. The judge looked over, nodded in acknowledgement, and said, Apologies, Ms. My last name. Please continue. I pulled out 2 folders from my bag. The first one contained proof that Martha had legally changed her name. I handed it over to the judge with a calm but firm statement. I find it interesting that this family is so obsessed with a name that isn't even theirs. Derek shifted uncomfortably, and Martha went pale. The judge quickly skimmed through the documents and then looked at Martha. Ms. Martha's last name. This is accurate, correct? Martha stammered, trying to maintain control of the situation. That's not relevant, she muttered. Oh, I think it is, I said, my lawyer stepping in smoothly. You see, the sacred family name that she's fighting for, it was adopted. So why is she demanding my client follow a tradition that she herself didn't follow? The judge's face remained unreadable, but I could see the effect of our words. This was a blow they hadn't seen coming. Martha's expression tightened. Then I pulled out the second folder, the one that contained the email from Derek. The email where he and Martha had discussed using CPS against me, planning to make false accusations to get temporary custody of my child. The judge's face darkened as he read it. Mr. Derek's last name, he said slowly, his voice cold. Are you admitting that you attempted to manipulate this court and child protective services with false allegations against the mother of your child? Derek froze, his face going pale. I didn't. The judge raised a hand, silencing him. Enough. This is not a game. I glanced at Martha, who remained eerily calm, but I could see the rage simmering in her eyes. She knew this was a major loss. The judge dismissed all their claims against me and then looked at Derek. You need to reconsider who you're taking legal advice from. This behavior will reflect poorly on your custody rights moving forward. Martha stood up abruptly, storming out of the courtroom without saying a word. Derek turned to me, his face twisted in anger. You think you've won? I tilted my head slightly, not even a hint of a smile. Didn't I? Derek swallowed hard, looking like he was about to say something else. But he turned and followed his mother out of the room. I thought it was over. I thought I had finally won. But then, 3 days later, I received a message from an unknown number. You think you're safe, but you have no idea what's coming. No name, no context. But my gut told me who had sent it. I knew Martha wasn't done yet. The message shook me, but I refused to let it control me. I immediately sent a screenshot to my lawyer. Can we trace this? I asked. We're already working on it. My lawyer replied. Then I received another call from CPS. The agent on the other end sounded different, and I felt a sinking feeling in my stomach. I thought we were done, I said, trying to stay calm. The agent sighed. We were, but, a new report just came in. My blood ran cold. From who? She hesitated. I can't disclose that. I laughed bitterly. Let me guess. It accuses me of something new. There was a pause, then a clearing of her throat. I can't say much, but I can tell you that this complaint is unusual. That night, I got an email from an unknown sender. When I opened it, my heart dropped. Inside was a video. I pressed play, and what I saw made my blood run cold. The footage was clear. Derek and Martha sitting in a diner, whispering to a woman across the table. The audio was equally clear. Martha, we just need her ruled unfit. You understand, something subtle, nothing permanent, just enough to get temporary custody. The CPS agent wasn't on it. They were bribing her to falsify reports and help them take my child. I could hardly breathe as I watched. They weren't just trying to tear apart my family. They were willing to pay off a government official to do it. I immediately sent the video to my lawyer. She called me instantly. "This is it," she said. "We've got them." But I wasn't done. I didn't stop there. I sent the video to the police, to the judge overseeing our case, and to the higher-ups at CPS. I sat back, waiting for the storm to hit. A week later, Derek was arrested. The charges were serious: conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted custodial interference, and bribery. The CPS agent was fired and arrested too. And then there was Martha. She tried to play innocent, but the feds came for her as well. Bribing a government official wasn't a small crime, and she couldn't escape the consequences. Martha was charged with conspiracy and obstruction of justice. She fought it, but the evidence was airtight. In the end, she was found guilty and sentenced to 2 years in prison. Derek pled guilty in exchange for a reduced sentence. He got 1 year in jail and lost all parental rights. He wouldn't even be allowed to see our child. Looking back, I knew I wasn't perfect. I ignored red flags with Derek, let Martha control things for too long, and stayed silent when I should have fought sooner. But in the end, I made sure my child would never have to grow up under their toxic control. I decided to change my child's last name, not to mine, not to Derek's, but to a completely new one, a name that neither Derek nor Martha could touch, a name that symbolized freedom. After Martha served her time and got out of prison, she tried to contact me. I blocked her immediately. Derek, from jail, sent me a letter begging for another chance. I burned it without reading past the first line. They had lost. They lost everything. But I walked away with my child, my peace, and a future that was finally mine.